Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mein Damen and Herren, seniors and senoritas, and comic book fans the world over, welcome back again to Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me questions about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. Michael Boberg relates to us. I recently read your Civil War comic in which you featured a story about General Custer that didn't paint him in an ugly light. You also talked about a Little Bighorn recently without dropping into some of the cliches about him as a person. Having grown up in the same hometown as Custer, I've studied a lot about him, especially his career with the Union Army. What are your thoughts about him overall? Was he part of the inspiration for Ulysses Hadrian Armstrong? Being from PA, have you ever visited the Gettysburg area battlefields where he fought? Ulysses Hadrian Armstrong is a Batman villain, for those of you who don't know, that I created, called the General. And basically, he was a boy genius turned to crime using his knowledge of military strategy. And I used him in a bunch of stories, both with Batman and Robin. And yeah, I just like the idea of borrowing names of famous military leaders. Ulysses for either Ulysses from the Iliad, uh, who was a military genius in his own right, and the Emperor Hadrian, who prosecuted a successful war against the Dacians, and Armstrong just because it sounds cool and it comes from George Armstrong Custer's middle name. So yeah, it wasn't really based on Custer, other than the fact that the general thought a lot about himself. It's a very, very. He was a brat. Okay, and yeah, not only because I'm from Pennsylvania, we did visit the Gettysburg area. I was a kid during the Civil War centennial, and my dad was a Southerner. Um, and he took us. He was very, very much interested in the Civil War, or as he called it, the War for Southern Independence. And we toured a bunch of battlefields throughout the 4-year Civil War centennial. In fact, we went down to Bull Run to watch a reenactment on the 100th anniversary of the battle, which, boy, was I impressed. So yeah, I've toured a few battlefields. Walked Gettysburg, saw Little Round Top, all the rest of it. So yes to that one. Now on to Custer. Um, we look back in history thanks to cultural Marxists and the way they teach in public school, and they break history down into the oppressed and the oppressors, heroes and villains. And anybody who's read any amount of history, honest history, knows that it simply isn't that easy. It doesn't break down that way. It's not a simple story. It, History is full, just as today is full of complex, complicated people who had character arcs, to put it in story terms. And George Armstrong Custer was um, no different. Yes, he was ambitious. Yes, he had an ego. Yes, he really wanted to be promoted to a general and stay there, but it was not to be for him. But but the thing is that there's a lot of reasons we remember Custer, and we remember Custer today basically because of his role at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. But Custer was very, very famous in his time. He was well known throughout the United States. One of the reasons being not only because of his courage, he was an absolute war hero in the Civil War, um, but not only for his courage, but um, his encampment for his cavalry unit was raided by Confederates while he was away on campaign. And the Confederates, stole everything in sight because they were scavenging, and they stole a lot of Custer's personal effects. And among those effects were love letters between himself and his wife. And apparently, he and his wife had a very, very passionate relationship, very passionate marriage, and this got written down. And The letters were taken to Richmond as part of an intelligence grab, and they wound up in the hands of Confederate newspapers who published them, hoping these letters would help mock Custer, malign his character, because apparently they were pretty spicy for the time. But it all backfired on the Confederate propagandists, because the letters went viral. These were the 1800s equivalent of sex tapes. And the women, Confederate women all over the South, read these letters and got the vapors, man. They got pretty excited about this Custer guy. He seemed like a hot date. So he became very, very famous, more famous through the South than he was in the North at the time. And of course, he became famous in the North for his daring exploits. He very much saw himself as a romantic figure, as a chevalier, as a knight of old, and this image persisted throughout his career. And yes, in Civil War Adventures, Book 1, still being published by Dover Press, a story by me and Enrique Villagran, and we tell the tale of Custer facing overwhelming odds in a reckless but successful attempt to thwart a Confederate advance behind Union lines. So it's I just presented the facts. I mean, he was a hero. There's no taking that away from him. On a related note, comics-wise, I did a story for Medal of Honor. It's a series of online comics you can read for free. I do these for the Association for the United States Army. And when they first hired me, the two I was most interested in, I said, are we going to get to Audie Murphy, and are we going to get to Tom Custer? And we did eventually get to Tom Custer. And it's art by Andrew Paquette. It's this gorgeous story that he drew. And it's a story of Tom Custer in a cavalry action, very much like the one that I portrayed in Civil War Adventures. Tom Custer led a forlorn hope counterattack against overwhelming Confederate forces and saved the day with a lot of courage and valor and self-sacrifice. And like I said, you can read that free. I will provide a link below. Now Michael goes on. He wants to share a little something with us that I think is fascinating. He's a history geek. I'm a history geek. As a bonus, do you believe Custer invented the photobomb? Here's a pretty famous picture of Abraham Lincoln and McClellan's senior staff after Antietam. This would have been after the bloodiest day of the Civil War, the battle at the Sunken Road at Antietam. And here's Lincoln with McClellan's staff, and they're all posing, photo op. But Michael goes on, the full view of this photo features a young Captain George Custer set apart from everyone else, almost like he sneaked in late. Given the fact that photography was still in its infancy, could this be the first photobomb? And here, if you look off there to the right, you'll see George Armstrong Custer sort of standing apart. And it looks like he thought, hey, they're going to take a picture. I'm going to kind of get in the frame, but not too close. I'll hopefully be in the picture. And he was. And he was not a part of McClellan's staff. He was a cavalry captain with his own unit. So he didn't really officially belong in this picture, but decided he would show up anyway. And he would go on, because of his actions, to eventually be promoted to brigadier general, a rank that was taken away from him when the Union Army demobilized at the end of the Civil War. He was reduced to colonelcy, which he tried to. He tried to get his promotion back, which those ambitions led to his unfortunate sortie into the Valley of the Little Bighorn. Ace Mowick, you've described writers that have the goal of writing X amount of words a day and doing it for a paycheck as hack writers. But how would you describe a writer that will take on a project that may be out of their comfort zone because they're trying to challenge themselves, or just to see that they're not a one-trick pony, such as someone who writes spy thrillers deciding to make a Western or a science fiction story. And is there any you think have succeeded in pushing themselves like that? Yeah, I mean, that's admirable. I mean, I've done that myself. I mean, I think when you write, particularly, if you're going to write a prose novel in a genre you'd never written before, you got to do a lot of research. You got to do a lot of thinking. It stretches your abilities. You're challenging yourself. Can I do this? Can I make this work? And I encourage any writer to do that. Don't specialize. I've never been a specialist, and I think that is at the core of why I'm still around. I mean, why I've had the success that I've had is I never specialized. I never just wrote about superheroes. I never just wrote horror. I never just wrote crime. I like a lot of different genres, and some I haven't even touched yet. And I think you should challenge yourself. I mean, I know a lot of writers who like to stay in that space. They've typecasted themselves and they like to stay in that space. But I don't think you should as a writer. The writer that immediately comes to mind who was able to sort of move beyond the genre he was typecast in was Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton, I know the lords of science fiction, the intelligentsia, the pseudo-intellectuals who think they own science fiction, sort of poo-poo the idea that Michael Crichton was a master science fiction writer, but he was. I guess they don't like him because he was so popular. But, he was a master science fiction writer. But he also wrote excellent historical fiction. Eaters of the Dead and Great Train Robbery are just terrific historical novels, set in two completely different periods. And he did his research, and he, not only into the era and the details of the era, but into the language of the era. I mean, they're just ingenious novels, and my two favorite of all of the stuff Crichton did. I enjoyed everything he did, but that's the best example, or first one that comes to mind, of someone who said, "Hey, I'm going to write this next," and because he was a best-selling author, he could write whatever the hell he wanted to write. So apparently, he wrote a Western. I have not read it. It was published posthumously, and I'm always leery of those kind of novels because how much of it was really him? Okay. Hey, Twin Spin. Ace, you get another question. I've been looking for a physical copy of The Joker's Devil Advocate online, and the price is a little higher than someone would expect it to be, even for an out-of-print comic. I suppose the videos where it's been mentioned have helped a new audience discover it, not to mention intriguing premise with Joker being how he should be, instead of the monologuing Hannibal Lecter that appears in comics nowadays from writers that think they're the next Alan Moore. My question is, are there any other graphic novels that came out around the same time that are great but flew under the radar as well because of not being properly advertised, low print runs, whatever? Well, Joker's Advocate certainly was a victim of not being marketed and low print runs. It was seen as blasphemy to say, "Hey, here's a good Joker story." No. At DC, the Killing Joke is the ultimate Joker story. No Joker story could ever be as good as the Killing Joke. So just go away now. This ended up happening only because something had happened to DC, and my editors owed me a big favor. And this was the payback. And of course, Graham and I paid them back with a wonderful graphic novel. We didn't phone it in. We didn't mail it in. We worked our butts off on this. It's never been reprinted. Oh, it gets reprinted overseas all the time. I get German editions and Spanish editions and Italian editions. It's never been reprinted here, which is a shame. You would think in all these massive, gigantic Joker collections, they could throw this one in, but they don't. Maybe we should all write letters or protest or something. Anyway, and I'm sorry if these videos have increased the price of it, but that's what happens. You talk about something and the price goes up. It's like it's Martha Stewart's life story. She talks about something that no one's ever talked about before, and all of a sudden everybody wants it. So anyway, as far as projects from that, particularly from that period, I don't think ever got the attention they deserved. Superman: The Dark Side by John Francis Moore and Kieran Dwyer, and inked by my friend Hilary Parda. I think it was just a terrific story. I really liked it. And it was a Elseworlds, or imaginary tale, if you will. What if Superman had been born on Apocalypse? And I really thought it deserved a lot more attention than it got. I thought it was solid, fun. It paid off. It delivered on its premise, and now is virtually forgotten. And of course, now that I'm mentioning it, the price will quintuple on eBay for the back issues or the collection. But if you ever get a chance to check it out, you should. Probably today. Jacob, oh boy. Zubek? Yeah, okay. Sorry. I remember thinking to myself as a younger man that a cool way to explain the code names in G.I. Joe would be that all the members were officially KIA, MIA. Little did I know that's exactly the direction you took in the book while you were on the title. What made you think of taking the Joes down the clandestine route? The cat and mouse, where the Joes and Cobra both realize the other exists, in some of the most fun I've had in comics. Also, why does Snake Eyes like whale songs? Yeah, I mean, this is something Larry probably would have wanted to do back in his original run, but Hasbro wasn't going to let you do that. Basically all the G.I. Joe characters were officially dead. And I just thought it made sense. If they're going to join this unit and basically live, breathe, eat, and sleep G.I. Joe, this is an army unit you join and never leave. Literally, never leave. There's no leave. There's no furlough. There's no going home. You're a Joe for life. So what better way to get volunteers who would dedicate themselves to this life than to find people who were willing to leave it all behind, family, friends, past, and start a whole new life as a G.I. Joe. And that way, basically, you don't have to deal with any kind of backstory or familial complications or any of the rest of it, because after all, in the end, G.I. Joe is a military fantasy. No one, there's never going to be a unit like G.I. Joe and everything else. It's a fantasy. It's a toy soldier fantasy, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. That's the fun of it. And so I didn't want any of those complications, and I thought it give it kind of a cool feel that they were all dead men and dead women who belonged to G.I. Joe. They were off the books, off the grid, no longer on the record in their war against Cobra. And why does Snake Eyes like whale songs? Did I come up with that? If I did, I don't remember. It was an homage to the quirky sense of humor that Larry Hama always had. Larry's, wicked, perverse, sometimes cruel, often dark sense of humor, and sometimes goofy. And I'm saying that these are not pejoratives. I'm saying this as compliments. It's part of the enormous charm of G.I. Joe is that Larry infuses these things with his own sense of irony. And I thought, okay, what's a weird thing? I didn't want Snake Eyes wouldn't listen to anything else anyone else had ever listened to. He wouldn't have a favorite. He wouldn't listen to banjo music. So he listens to whale songs. And I would assume that someone like Snake Eyes, who's been through all the horrible, traumatic things he's been through, whale songs are something restful, and it fit with the fact that they're obviously wordless. Unless you're a whale, I assume there are lyrics in whale songs that only whales understand. But that was the reason for it. Trying to capture, and I often try to do that. Try to capture Larry's quirky sense of humor because it's a big part of Joe. It really is. Matt Strott, as a world-class writer, that's me. How do you decide on new projects? Do you only work on the projects you're passionate about, or will you do any project if the price is right? Is there an idiot tax you charge for unappealing projects, or there's some projects you just won't touch? Um, I won't write anything I'm not interested in. I've taken on jobs because, quite frankly, there wasn't a lot of work coming in and I had to take them. And was I excited about taking them? No. But did I work my way into them? Did I get excited about them? Did I find things to get really interested in? Yes. Otherwise, I couldn't complete them. I can't write anything I'm not passionate about. I can't write anything that I don't find interesting or challenging to write. So I've never taken a job just to take a job. Um, Anybody who's ever offered me work will tell you the same thing. They'll offer me something, and I always say, look, give me a couple of days to think about it. I don't want to say yes automatically because I might not have anything to contribute here. I may not either be conversant enough with this character or find a new interesting angle on this character or be able to think of a good story for this character. So I'm not immediately going to say yes. I'm going to think about it and make sure I'm the right fit. I want to make sure that there's not somebody who could do this job better. And I have turned down jobs and said, look, this other writer probably would write the hell out of the story, do a better job than me. Why don't you go to them? And then I've turned down stuff I simply, wasn't at all interested in. Because it's really, it's never been about the money. No, I would not charge an exorbitant amount of money to write something I didn't feel like writing just for the payday. A prime example is I turned down the highest page rate of my life by quitting the Rob Liefeld Captain America project. When I saw the art, I had no interest continuing on. I was never paid anything, not a dime for my work on that, because I said I don't want to be associated with this. I think it's a piece of crap, and I don't want my name on it. And I could have held my nose and made a whole lot of money, but it would have been horrible. I mean, I would rather spend those days writing something good that I enjoyed writing. Now, as far as page rates, I mean, if you're hiring me for work for hire, if you've created something and you want to hire me work for hire to write it, and I won't have any rights or anything, yeah, I'm going to charge you a higher page rate because there's no back end for me. I'm helping you build your franchise. I'm not going to benefit from that at all. But that said, if someone comes to me with an interesting project, I'll take a lower page rate to help out, to help make it happen if I'm interested in it. But of course, I got to have a piece of it, even if it's a small piece. Even if the promise is you'll get 1% of the net if it ever gets made into a movie. I mean, I got to have a little something on the back end, so I feel good about it. But yeah, I don't write for the money. I really don't. I never have. I don't want to be that guy. Okay, Joshua Ignatowski. Which Star Trek, the original series episodes, would you recommend as the best to show to someone you're trying to get hooked on the series, especially if said person can't stand the quality of acting and plot he's seen in a lot of pre-70s non-sitcom TV shows exhibit? That's an easy answer. It's Balance of Terror. Balance of Terror is, and I'm gonna say this from my own experience. I watched Star Trek as a kid. My mom watched it with me every once in a while. She kind of dug it, but my dad thought it was just, I love my dad. My dad loved me and everything else, but he thought a lot of the stuff I liked was goofy. I think if you're a parent, you think a lot of the stuff your kids like is goofy. You don't get it. But my dad thought Star Trek was just, okay, that's one of these stupid things my son watches. He was particularly hard on me for watching Wild Wild West, but he just made fun of Star Trek. And then one day he was home from work, which was unusual. My dad was always at work. He was home from work when there was a Star Trek was on, and it was the episode Balance of Terror. And he sat there with me while I watched it, and he got into it. And the reason is simple. Balance of Terror is a submarine story. If you haven't seen the episode, The Enterprise is in the neutral zone, and they run into the Romulans that they've heard about but never seen before. And this is the first time people from Earth are seeing the Romulans. They have this Romulan encounter, and it's very much the plot line to The Enemy Below, Robert Mitchum's submarine movie, where they're using various tricks and chicanery, to hunt one another down in the neutral zone. And there's a lot of really cool stuff and rising tension and all the rest of it. And because it was the template of a submarine movie, my dad was able to get into it. Not that my dad was against science fiction. My dad is a guy. He sat me down when they ran Forbidden Planet on TV and said, "You gotta see this. You're gonna love this." He just didn't have any time for Star Trek, and but he liked it. Now I don't know if he ever watched any other episodes, but he definitely enjoyed Balance of Terror. And with that, I think it's a great introductory episode. We see that all of the characters portrayed at their best. It's a solid suspense story. It's interesting, even for a person who's not into science fiction. They're going to understand what's going on because they've seen this kind of story before, and it doesn't have any of what non-Trek fans see as some of the Star Trek goofiness. So there you have it. That's my recommendation. Oh, it's an Ignatowski twin spin. What would you recommend as the best way to eat a steak? I don't eat red meat. The best way for me to eat a steak is when all the chicken's gone, or all the seafood has been eaten. So I don't eat red meat, but and I've never been a steak connoisseur, even back when I did eat red meat. How long have you not eaten red meat, Chuck? I haven't eaten red meat in almost 40 years. Cholesterol, the rest of it. I just don't. Sorry, paleo diet people. You eat all the red meat you want, and it's not an animal rights thing, because I like my leather jacket and my leather boots. It's not for me. Now, the only red meat that I have had the past 40 years and would eat again in a heartbeat is buffalo. I think buffalo is awesome. And it's low in cholesterol. It's the leanest red meat on the planet other than ostrich, I think. But who can afford ostrich meat? Just as a total aside, did you know that an ostrich's brain is smaller than its eye? Tiny little brain. But boy, the meat's expensive. But yeah, that's my culinary habits. A lot of chicken, a lot of seafood, but no steak. Sorry, my friends. But you can go have a steak anytime you like, and enjoy every single bite, my friends. Okay, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for liking and subscribing and whatever else you did. And I will hopefully see all of you down the road.